that, but I
Okay.
mean, I think they want to host a couple more events there and generate some more revenue at BMO Field. They're talking about bringing the NHL Winter Classic when, in the
Mm.
winter when the stadium's not being used, and
That'd be
obviously
nice.
CFL games would bring in more money. So they're talking about doing an expansion up to 30,000. There's no architecture drawings, nothing like that. It's very, very early on. But
Mhm.
these are the beginning whispers of something that, might happen. You might see $120 million poured into the stadium in the next couple of years, and it'll be like a two season kind of construction. They're hinting at you, right? But like I'm
Wow.
saying is the supporters were really against it, and now that the
Yeah.
front office has changed and shown that okay, we got the good head back on the shoulders when we're not total idiots anymore. And people are starting to open up and thinking. So some supporters are saying, "Okay, I still say I don't know because it's still up in the air. Who knows
Yeah.
until we get an actual solid concrete plan? Then I think it's a better time to make a decision."
Yeah.
But some people, even just with these little whispers, they're ready to go to war over this. So
So
So I don't know.
tell us more about Toronto.
well,
What's going to happen to Laval? What's going to happen to Matthias Laval?
that's a very good question. The club says if they can keep him, they could find a way and work out something with Garber. I don't know
I
what,
feel like
but
if you have to say maybe we could work out something with Garber, you're not going to work something out with Garber. If you're going to work something out with him, like nobody would ever know that you ever had a problem.
Yeah.
It would have been like, oh yes, Toronto has 3 DPs.
There's a new rule
special-
today.
Yeah, there
Added
would
the
be a new
fourth DP
rule
rule, right?
announcement. It would
Yeah,
be an
so-
extra special designated young impact player.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I want to keep him. He's shown a lot of great promise, but at this point, I'd be sad to see him go. But I'd still be confident in the team that we have. I wouldn't be so pissed as I would have been maybe 2-3 months ago.
You guys could loan him to Vancouver. They're kind of hurting.
Yeah, that would be
We
good.
can use a little shooting up.
Vancouver hasn't been making many moves this season, have they? Or off season, I mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, they made one, but it was sort of the reverse.
I think that was a move made on them. I don't know that was them making a move.
Well, okay. In Vancouver's defense, they did just get Betashore, who
Yep.
was
Yeah.
an MLS All-Star defender who's good.
This
Yeah,
is
he's
true.
good. He's very
He's gonna
solid.
play in the World Cup, so
Yep. But yeah, I want to hear more about the predictions of Toronto. Like
They're
if
all
you were,
over the
if you were
board.
a betting man.
If I was a betting man, I would bet that they get into the playoffs. I'd
Okay.
say you'd see a fourth or fifth spot, and where it goes from there, I think it would come down to injuries, and we'll see with Defoe's age, and some of the other players out there, some of the older guys, how they fare out through the entire season. It's a long season. There's a lot of travel. A lot of things can happen, right? You're playing on somewhat artificial turf. I don't know if we'll see Defoe or Bradley playing at Seattle, for example. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but Toronto has a history of injury there, so they're kind of, right, they don't want to bring too many good players out there and, squander what they've just built.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's a long season. It's very early. If I was a betting man, I'd make a conservative bet. And I would say they would make the playoffs. I hope they do better.
Okay.
I want them to do better, but I think at the very minimum, you're looking at a fourth or fifth playoff spot.
So I'm gonna be a little more optimistic, and I'm gonna go ahead and pencil in Toronto versus DC Eastern Conference Final. Okay with that.
The bottom two of the East now, at the top. I like that.
Wait, who's that? That's you being optimistic. You're not being optimistic for Toronto. You're being really optimistic for DC. That's more
true.
stretch for DC. Just pointing out the obvious.
I think DC versus Toronto in the play-in round is a good goal for you.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yes.
isn't that what I said? No.
And I'd love to be more optimistic, but after so many years of, I'm still there. I'm still a season seat holder. I'm there. Like I said, I go to games alone. So, I mean, I love it.
No.
But at the same time, like, you can only get your ass kicked so much before you start to, be a little bit pessimistic. So that's why I don't want to jinx it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Is I don't want to say something and then, like, oh, shit, that didn't happen, did it?
All right. So our goal is gonna be to get Dennis to make some wild prediction to jinx himself and make him feel bad.
See,
Okay.
and then last year my prediction was that Chivas would make the playoffs. So
Yeah,
let's not be making crazy.
really didn't happen.
No.
I predicted that too. I picked that too.
Yeah.
I stand by that.
that one day Chivas will make the playoffs.
This year too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first 8 weeks of the season last year, it certainly
Yeah,
looked
they
like that
looked
was
good.
Yeah.
possible.
They
Yeah.
looked good.
And then they fired Chelis, and then everyone was sad.
Yeah.
And then we flew.
Dumpster fire. Yeah.
Then we flew a banner over their stadium.
That was fantastic.
It just went worse.
FC Dallas time.
FC Dallas
FC
time. Let's
Dallas
do
time.
it. I've got my FC Dallas FC Dallas review that I put up here. So yeah, speaking of teams that started very, very brightly and finished not so good. Just a quick 2013 recap for Dallas. I knew they were doing well, but I went back and looked at the numbers really quick. On May 25th, they were 8-3-2. They were top of the West. They were really, really good. From June to September, they were 1-7-5. And the second half of the season, they had 3 wins, 2 of which were against Chivas, which is not so good. So Dallas had a couple key changes. They got rid of David Ferreira, who was the 2010 MLS MVP, had not been playing particularly well. He was on $300-something-ish thousand. Getting rid of him freed up a lot of space for them to bring in someone new. They got rid of Kenny Cooper, who they traded for Adam Moffat with Seattle.
Okay, I have to ask, how is Kenny Cooper on a new team every year? I feel like he's not that bad. I watched him play for
He's not that
2012.
good. Here's the thing with Kenny Cooper. Kenny Cooper because I looked up all these numbers. Kenny Cooper took 28 shots on goal last year and scored 6 goals. Their highest goal scorer, Blas Perez, took 20 shots on goal and scored 11 goals. I mean,
Okay.
like and the other thing about Coop is that he is very, very, very streaky. He'll go on a run and he'll look great, and he'll at some point randomly go off of his run and then just start flopping around in the box and generally be a demoralizing spearhead with which to attack the goal. I mean, Dallas, they had a couple of things go wrong for them, but one of them was that their attack was a guy who had no confidence and was falling down all the time, and then another guy, David Ferreira, who was 34 and just could not be bothered to run or do any pressing, any movement. I mean, do anything other than occasionally look for a glamour pass. So, Kenny Cooper is not bad. He goes in streaks and plays very, very well, and he goes in streaks and plays abysmally. And I think it's something that a lot of teams have said, well, he's not bad, but for the money that you have to put out for a starting striker, he's not worth it, because he doesn't bring much to the game other than the ability. I mean, he's a big guy, but he's not a target man. He's more of a pure goal poacher. He's not great in the air either for a big guy. He's not particularly fast. He's got a lot going against him. He's a great goal poacher, as you saw with New York, but
Now, when you say that, I guess it makes sense when you say things like he scored 6 goals on 28 shots. My prevailing memory of Kenny Cooper is his penalty getting saved by Joe Willis in that playoff game. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the confidence you're inspiring me right now.
Oh man,
Yes.
I watched him play for Portland in 2011. He off the field, he is apparently the nicest guy. On the field, he is occasionally brilliant, largely ineffective, and doesn't bring a great deal to a team. This could be his year to turn it around. Again, I'm like, everybody I've talked to who's ever met him said that he is just like the sweetest, friendliest guy. So I wish him all the best. But anyway, sorry, back to Dallas.
Back to Dallas.
So David Ferreira, Jackson, Kenny Cooper. That was most of their attack. What they're left with is Fabian Castillo and Blas Perez. Blas Perez had a good year. Fabian Castillo, I think, this year is going to be his breakout year, and I would be surprised if he's not an MLS All-Star. Their other glimmer of hope is George John, who, for my money, is one of the best defenders in MLS. He's a very unsung guy, but he is solid, and his being injured through the summer coincided very neatly with Dallas's abysmal run. I think he's a really key part of their team. So the keys for Dallas this year are going to be stay healthy, don't let George John get injured, keep Fabian Castillo developing and looking good. Mauro Diaz also, they've got a young designated player named Mauro Diaz who is, I think, also very promising. They have the parts potentially to be a solid team, but they're very, very thin. They've gotten rid of a bunch of people and they haven't brought in much. I think they're going to rely on their younger players. Castillo, Diaz are both pretty young. George John is experienced, but he's nothing really flashy. Blas Perez, Panamanian striker, he's a good, serviceable, solid player, but they don't have much else, and they haven't brought in anybody. So I think Oscar Perea is going to have a very hard time. He did a good job last year with Colorado with a young team. Actually, he did a great job with the injuries and the young team that he had. But I just don't see them getting all that far because they don't have enough depth.
Josh, is Michel still there?
No. Wait, is that true? I don't know.
Because the thing was, when Dallas was on that fantastic run in the beginning of the season...
He is still there. Yeah.
Yeah, that kid was playing great, and by the end of the season, when they were playing terribly, he was fighting for minutes. Now, as someone who didn't follow Dallas that close, I don't know what happened there, but it seemed like he was going to be a star for them halfway through the season, and then just wasn't.
Yeah. He... I kind of remember him being... I remember seeing him when Portland played him, and he looked.
Yeah, he was scoring set piece goals, and he had great service in the box, and then he just wasn't playing anymore.
Yeah, I did not watch enough Dallas to know exactly what went wrong with them last year. Other than I know that they had some key injuries, and that Ferreira, their captain, was just pointedly unmotivated. I remember watching him at Portland and thinking, wow, that guy just does not want to be out there, does he? He's just not at all, bothered by the game going on around him. Maybe Michel will be on. Maybe Javon Watson will have a less abysmal year. I think he's somebody who people like to hope will come good at some point, but it was not a Dallas player. Dallas fans like to really rip on him as being particularly ineffectual on the wing and never closing anybody down, never fighting for any fighting for a second ball. I thought last year Dallas were going to do a lot better than they did because they had what on paper looked like a really intimidating attack. They had Eric Hasley before, he also seemed to just completely fall out of form. Kenny Cooper, David Ferreira was, not. David Ferreira was still looking like somebody who might want to actually play a game. It just didn't seem to work out for them because of injuries and because of players just completely going off. Particularly in the midfield and defense, they looked really, really weak. And from everything that I can see, I don't see much evidence that they've done a lot to reinforce their real weak spots. I've gotten rid of some bad influence and a lot of dead weight salary cap wise in David Ferreira and changed up their attack with Kenny Cooper, but I don't see him finding the leadership that they need, and I don't see him having the depth to make it all the way through the season, especially when Blas Perez. Especially if something happens to Blas Perez, they really don't have anybody up front. So
now you talked about dead spots. I think you could argue they did do something about one of their dead spots at the head coaching position.
Yes, they did. Heineman was, he didn't inspire much confidence in
There was a
in the
lot
Dallas
of talk of just
faithful.
how terrible of a human he was. I mean, it's probably mostly or whatever, but
Yeah, I'm not. I shouldn't. I don't want to speculate on what the guy was like. But it was true that he fell out with a lot of players, and when he fell out with them, he would just sit people on the bench for long periods of time, not looking to trade them, not looking to. I mean, the same that happened with Breck Shea, who is admittedly a challenging case, but he seems to be doing fine now that he's over in England. But also tactically, Hinman was very, very inflexible. He made really weird substitutions. There was one game where I can't remember who they were playing, but I was watching. They were down 2-0, and he subbed an attacking midfielder for a defender. And you're just like, wait, what? Like, what are you trying to do? Why would you ever do that? Yeah, I think Oscar Perez is going to be a much better coach. And given that they've got some very talented young players that he could potentially build a core around, we could see them come good. But I don't think that this year is going to be that year. Yeah, they do have some midfield depth. Yeah, in the West in particular. They do have some midfield depth. If they use their depth really smartly, if they're very lucky with no injuries, if none of their players get hit with beer cans thrown by their own fans, maybe this year they'll nip somebody to that fifth spot and get into the playoffs, but I really doubt it. I think this is more of a rebuilding year for them, and it's good that they got Oscar Pareja in there because he is a very good coach, and I think we could see them come good next year, not this year.
all right. Okay. Programming note. I'm not sure about this. I think we started recording this at like 9. It's now 10 my time. I think it's 11 Dennis time and 8 o'clock y'all time. And then we've got that 15-minute interview we've got to plug in. So 2 options. One is if you guys are exhausted about talking soccer, we can wrap it up soon and somehow segue to the interview or whatever. Option 2 is we keep talking if you guys are still excited or whatever, and split the thing into 2 parts this week. That we could do like part 1, part 2, Tuesday, Thursday type deal. So what do y'all think?
Does anybody have more stuff to talk about?
I think we could probably cover Marco Papa in 3 minutes to 5 minutes and maybe close it out if we want to make it a single episode.
Okay, I did want to talk about Hinckley's AMA a little bit, just because I feel like we are the RMLS podcast, and it'd be cool to like talk about things that were cool that are RMLS, especially my one-day flare switch, which was a lot of fun. Flare bets should be a thing on RMLS. I don't understand why they're not.
I have suggested that like 3 different times and was met with a resounding set of downvotes.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
Because I frequent our hockey, and I think that flare bets are fun. It's it's harmful to no one, and it's a good bit of rivalry because when Cascadia Cup matches roll around, I promise there's nothing that I want less than having the Timbers flare for a week.
Yeah.
But it's that much more fun,
It was really cool to see like the Rapids logo next to my name just for that day. Because first of all, it felt like I was a winner.
Like, hey, this is what the playoffs are like?
Yeah, something like that. And just because, it gets boring after a while just to see, DC United crest next to my name, whatever. It's there all the time.
Hey, I don't know if you know this, but you can just change that literally any time.